I would like to introduce Barry M. Koplen. Along with having been the fourth generation owner and manager of A. Koplen Clothing Company in Danville, Virginia for more than 2 decades, Barry Koplen has also been a prize-winning photographer. In addition, Koplen served as an adjunct professor at Danville Community College, where he taught humanities, English, and creative writing. For more than 60 years, he has written poetry and prose that has often been published by friendly journals. His BA from Emory University led to an MAT at Converse College in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and years later an MFA from Queen's University in Charlotte, North Carolina. One of his books, Wail of Grief, Wail of Joy, relates his impressions of life as a Jew in a non-Jewish world. Koplen's book, No Gold Stars, based on his memoir, tells of his integrating the Greenville, South Carolina school system as a teacher at Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr.'s alma mater, Sterling Junior Senior High, and of the victories of his students there. Reverend Jackson Sr. signed a blurb on the back cover. Welcome, Miss Barry. How are you?
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be here. This is a wonderful space. I feel right at home here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We are filming here in the lobby of the offices of Dan River Basin Association in Eden, North Carolina. Barry, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I read your bio, but let's know the real Barry.
Well, the real me was the oldest child of 2 wonderful parents. I have a brother and a sister, a younger brother and sister. And I was the first to go to college and to actually graduate from the university in my family. Even though my mom did complete her RN degree, my dad never went to college. The school, Emory University, that I went to was quite a wonderful institution. And it was interesting there because it was a challenge to me. In the beginning of my sophomore year, I was in a wreck. I got thrown through the roof of a car that was going about 50 miles an hour and ended up with a concussion. I was in a hospital for 2 weeks, unconscious for 2 weeks. And when I regained consciousness, I was ready to go back to school. And in those days, they didn't know much about brain injuries. So 4 days after I came back to life, I was back at Emory University. And it was a real challenge because the injury had left me with a depression that I later found out was due to the fact that the landing on my head when I was thrown out of the car had caused my brain to swell, the impact. And the swelling is what caused the depression. That took 3 years to go down. And I didn't know that until after I graduated and started working on my graduate degrees. That's why when I wrote this book that you mentioned, the No Gold Stars book, it begins with the time when I was in the hospital and coming back to Emory and having to fight just to survive. And the reason that I started it there is because my challenge was to make do with the remainder of my memory because I'd lost so much of it. Mm-hmm. And I had to rethink how to learn and how to remember in order to graduate. And I think that's what prepared me when the book is about when I was looking for work after school. And I decided that I wanted to teach, and I went to Greenville, South Carolina, and went into the principal's office. Didn't know the principal, he didn't know me, and turned out that the school was one of Greenville's all-black schools. And they'd been under order to integrate, but no other white teacher would come to apply for the job. The principal was so excited to see me because he had been compelled and ordered to hire a white teacher, and he couldn't find any until I walked in. I got the job in 4 minutes, and he didn't even look at my references. That's a kind of situation we were living with back then. Anyway, the book is about the year that I spent at Sterling Junior Senior High, which happened to have been Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. alma mater, and he did sign a blurb on the back cover. The book is a wonderful story. It's all true, and there are a lot of exciting moments in it. I'm reluctant to say too much because I think people would enjoy reading it, but
Okay. I don't want to do spoilers.
I don't want to spoil it too much, but one of my students turns out to be one of the main characters. Her name is Mary, and Mary was a genius. I was teaching 8th graders, and Mary would come to me with reports she had written about books she had read, and the books that she was writing about and the books that she had read were books that I didn't even know about until I was in college. Here it was, Mary was an 8th grader.
Mm-hmm.
She was a genius. Mary had one problem. She didn't talk to anybody, not even me. But she would communicate by handing me these wonderful papers, and it was just amazing. Every day she would come, just about every day she would come to my room after school, and she would sit in the student desk and I would be in my teacher desk, and I just thought she wanted to talk, and she would sit there. Now I knew how bright the child was, and I just wanted to find some way to get her to speak, and that went on for 4 or 5 months. And the rest of the story deals with what happened to Mary, and not only that, but what happened to me. And the story is filled with incidents that you won't find in a typical teacher book. One of them, for example, was about when I was thrown in jail and had to teach the next morning. But I don't want to spoil the book.
Well, that definitely has some intrigue into it, so we'll have to read that.
The people who've read the book, they do 2 things. They don't put it down until they finish it, and they always give it to somebody else to read after they've read it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a wonderful book. I keep being told that they should make a movie out of it, and the movie that comes to mind is To Sir with Love, and you remember that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is almost the same thing in reverse. But that's the reason I mentioned that book, and that was the first one that I really wrote when I started writing, is because it was so significant to me. It was so significant an achievement in that I actually started it and finished it. And once I did that, I began to understand what it meant to be a writer and what you had to do in order to continue writing. And as you can see, I've got a lot of books to prove that I've learned something from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your training, you were telling me that your BA was in humanities and political science, and that was from Emory, and then you went on to get your
It's an MAT degree.
MAT degree from Converse College, and that was in English.
MAT stands for Masters in the Art of Teaching.
Oh, okay.
And I actually remember now. I went back to Emory as a damaged person. I didn't have a brain when I went back to Emory. Literally, I had to teach myself how to learn again because my brain stopped working. The most shocking thing to me was after the accident, I was so eager to get back there, and I'd go to my class, say Tuesday's class, and do my homework that night, and go back to the class on Wednesday, and I couldn't remember a thing. And that was the effect of the brain damage. Mm-hmm. And I knew from that point on that I had to learn how to learn again, and I had to teach myself. And that's why the sophomore, junior, and senior years at Emory were such a challenge. I mean, I literally was battling to learn and having to find out the best way to do it, and it didn't. I didn't really achieve that until my senior year, when I just barely missed getting all A's and B's in one of my last semesters. But it took that long mm-hmm. to figure out how to deal with the limitations, and it gave me a real appreciation for people who have limitations, not just like mine. Mm-hmm. But when I started teaching in Greenville, and I saw that the children that I was teaching had some deficiencies as a result of the opportunities that they didn't have in their lives, I felt that I could relate to them very easily, because I was having to constantly live a life in which I was compensating for my injury. Mm-hmm. And they were always trying to compensate for some aspect that was almost like an accident of birth to them. And I think we both, and the book says this, I think the book is a book of triumph. And of course you gotta read through a lot of the challenges that led to that, but it's worth sticking it out to the end. Yeah.
Well, I kind of want to. So we've talked a lot about your writing and your work as a teacher. There's some road led you to photography, because behind us we have some of your work. This one you were telling me was you took that out in Arizona.
Yeah.
That you were driving, and you asked your girlfriend to drive so that you could get you saw the lightning and wanted to get the lightning. And this one, can you tell a little bit about this one? This one you said was from Israel?
Yes, my older daughter, when she graduated from the University of Virginia, told me she knew what she wanted to do after graduation, and I thought she was going to tell me she wanted to go to grad school, but she said she wanted to go to Israel to live. Mm-hmm. And she did just that. She's been there ever since, and that was more than 12 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, both my girls are that smart and that independent. Mm-hmm. So I've been going to Israel annually to visit my children and now grandchildren. Mm-hmm. She's got 2 children. And when I do that, I take my camera a lot. And when the wars that involved Israel began, and I saw that a lot of the young men especially, and women too, were being drafted, I wanted to get pictures of them, just to let people see that they were good human beings, and mm-hmm. it's just a shame that they had to fight for their own well-being. And when I asked this young man to let me take his picture with his son, he was more than willing.
Beautiful smile.
Oh, I couldn't have asked for a better picture. That's why a lot of the pictures that I take relate to my travels, and I've been all over the world. If I'd had a bigger car, I would have brought more pictures, but I didn't have. as far as the way that I got into photography, I've always been interested since I was a teenager, since I was even before I was 13. And it just so happened that I had friends who either were very professional photographers or were interested in photography. And I learned about cameras. Actually started with a Leica and was using film for the longest time until the digital cameras really started making sense, and I've got a great one now. But one of my friends who was also interested in photography suggested that we set up a darkroom. So he and I literally had our own darkroom.
Nice.
And we were taking pictures and processing our film. It was fascinating. And when that happened, I knew that I wanted to learn more. So I enrolled in a photography school. It was a week-long course, an intensive week-long course. And I learned so much about photography there. And what I ended up finding was that if I was going to be a serious artist, photographic artist, I had to know what it was that really meant something to me with regard to using my camera, so that I could tell stories with it, and so that I could know where my focus was. Whereas, if I didn't want to be a serious photographer and just wanted to take pictures to put in a scrapbook, it wouldn't matter that I chose the subject matter. I could take pictures of an apple tree as well as a monument on Union Street. It didn't matter. But what I realized I really loved was nature, which you've seen my photographs at the Nature Center in Danville.
I apologize. Ballou Park, I can remember.
Yeah,
the
Ballou Park.
Ballou Park Recreation Center, the building there. On the top floor of that building, Barry has donated several of his photographs, and they're all around that room. So you, as public, can go and see his photographs there.
Yeah.
And they're all nature themed photographs, and I can show some of those while we're talking.
I think there are at least a dozen. There are probably a few more than that. But these were pictures. Most of them were taken at the park, at Ballou Park. And as you know, Ballou Park is adjacent now to, they're going to be gambling right next door to it. The casino is just about ready to open. And so I think a lot of people who go to the casino will want to just take a little stroll. I mean,
hopefully
it's only a block and a half to get to the park. And what a nice respite that would be from the noisy casino.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Anyway, so I donated those pictures, and people were happy that I did it because it really fit with what the Nature Center was supposed to be. Yeah. And I've won numerous prizes with my pictures from nature, as well as the pictures, of people. And so the two categories I like were the nature pictures, and the other category, I call it men at work. And I would actually go to many job sites, I still do, and talk to the people, find out what they're doing, and take pictures of the workers in the act of creating or dealing with, some aspect of their job. And these pictures have won a lot of prizes too, because they're all candid. I don't get people to pose. And that's the challenge to me. Anybody who knows a lot about taking pictures knows that if you're going to do candid and get a clear picture, you better have a camera that can catch the moment quickly enough, but the moment is only there like that, and then it's gone. So you have to be able to anticipate the moment that's coming. And fortunately, I seem to have a knack for that, and a lot of my pictures that have won prizes have won because I captured that moment with clarity. And that's a joyous thing for me. I love it. I mean, even now, I've been given permission to photograph and write a book about the huge 600,000 square foot mill building that's being turned into apartments. And there'll be businesses and restaurants and offices there. And so I've been doing that for more than a year now, and I look forward to putting it all together into a book. Of course, it's liable to be this thick because it's such a big building and there's so much to photograph and
Right.
so much of the story to tell. And it's just been fascinating for me to be able to do that.
Well, it sounds like with your background in creative writing and the photography, you're saying something that really piques my interest for an artist or talking with any artist is telling the story.
Right.
Like I had mentioned to you earlier, and people who've seen my programs before know that I'm a theater artist, and so it's all our mantra is tell the story. You can have all the flashy lights, all the sound effects, all the but if you don't tell the story, it's not worth anything. So I really enjoy what you're saying and how you can bring those two worlds of yours together to tell the story through your photography and through your writing.
Well, a couple of things come to mind when you say that. One is, as I was telling you earlier about my play, Apples and Oranges, and it does just that. It has a wonderful beginning, but by the end, you're ready to just celebrate, which, as far as I'm concerned, having studied drama and some of the courses I've taken, that's how you keep the audience involved and how you bring life to the words that they use. But having said that, the same thing is true with regard to any kind of writing, whether it's poetry or prose. And it's just a matter of being able to say to the person who's going to read it, I'm going to take you on a journey. And here's how it begins. And I'm not going to let you get lost on your way to the end until you get there. and that's a challenge because a lot of writers never learn those lessons, and as a result, the people who are reading get distracted or lose interest because they haven't been able to capture, the person's attention. And as you know, as much drama as you do, that is so important. You don't want to lose an audience, and you can lose an audience as easy as you can lose a reader.
Just while you were saying that, I thought of a connection to DARPA and to what we do here, building trails and building river accesses on the river and stuff, that there's a winding path and you've got to stay on the path and not lose the people who are who are traveling.
That's right.
You're the way you've built for them to travel.
Yeah.
I think that next question, you have answered that one. What keeps you creative? What inspires you to keep going and doing more?
That's a question I've had to answer early in my life, and I'll never forget. I've been writing since I was. And I can actually remember some of the pieces because my mom, who saved everything, saved some of them. But when I was in elementary school, I was writing stories. And of course, the awareness of the meaning of that wasn't there yet, but it kept happening. I kept writing, and I had encouragement from my family and my uncle, who was just this master lawyer who had wanted to be a creative writer, and I had people who taught me in college who were very encouraging. And what I ended up finding was that when I started writing seriously, I asked the same question you did. I just felt so compelled to do it. It was like, when you think about someone who paints houses and they love what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And you might ask, why do you do it? And the answer is because this is what I want to do. And it might be something that they learned from a generation prior. That maybe there were painters in their family. Mm-hmm. And they it's not work or an hourly job. It's a meaningful expression of what they do with their lives. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget when I wanted to really understand this, because I knew that I couldn't not do it. And, that meant that if I didn't do it for a day or so, I was going to I felt like, oh my God, why didn't you write? You should have written. And eventually, unexpectedly, I heard my dad started talking to me one day, and he said, well, one of your relatives, our relatives, had done research into the family genealogy, which I knew was hard to do because, the Holocaust and all that. And yet he had persevered and had gone to overseas to where the families had oriented and were, their origins there, and came back with a detailed explanation. I mean, you could see it. It was on paper of where the family had come from, and it seemed that the furthest back that he could go was a 12th century rabbi poet.
So it runs in the family.
Well, I mean, it was almost like saying, okay, this is your gift. Mm-hmm. This is what you must do. And from that moment on, I just said, okay, now that I understand, I'll do it. And what's been so interesting is that, rabbis are also teachers. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that I did. I mean, I felt called to teach. But what's so fascinating to me is that when my younger daughter graduated college, just like my older daughter did the day she graduated, she said, Dad, I know what I want to do. And I thought, okay, you've got these degrees in these different things, you're going to pick one and you go to grad school. She said, Dad, I want to be a rabbi. I couldn't believe it, because I knew that to be a rabbi meant she had to prepare herself just to make an application to go to rabbinical school, and that could take, just the preparation could take 4 or 5 years. And then when you go to the rabbinical school, it takes another 5 years or so. I mean, she was willing to dedicate her life, 10 years of it or more, to do that. And she's now an ordained rabbi, and she is the rabbi at one of the biggest cancer wards in a hospital in New York City. And she's just amazing. So I think all of us have that, if we are able to listen to things other than all the outside noise, we can hear what it is that's inside of us that leads us to do what we really are meant to do. And that's why, when I was dealing with my students, and I found that once I had found a way to let them see that they had their own voice, they began to, the word that comes to mind is divine, but it could be that. They began to find their own way. And they began to identify themselves with the things that meant something to them. And it was fascinating. That's why this No Gold Stars book, what a joy it is to think that it's actually done, that it can portray my students in all of their glory, because that's what it does.
I really like what you said about finding your own voice. As I mentioned to you earlier, I've done this series, and this is the third in my series for art and nature and speaking with artists, and this is my final installment. And so one of the things that I want to leave the audience with, those who've watched these, is to find your voice.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, that I would really like to inspire those who viewed these programs to find their voice and how that they can use art to tell their story to other people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a noble that's a noble path to take. Yeah.
I want to be specific about something real quick, because one of the things in my program during the research, I found out about the Danville Globe, and I think you along with Dottie Stone, I believe Dottie Stone is the artist who created the actual globe, correct?
Yeah. What happened was that she had made a globe that was similar to this, not nearly as difficult. For Bedford, and she made it with her students. Her students would make pieces that would fit on a globe, and she would put it all together. But in this case, the globe itself was a depiction of so many important places in Danville, and she told me she was determined to do it. She had been given a 3-month stay as an artist by Rick Barker in one of his buildings, and during that time she came up with the idea to do this, and she started working on it. What all of us who knew her thought was that was a profoundly difficult project. I mean, I was willing to help in any way I could, and she got me to take pictures of the different buildings in the city that should be on the globe, and the most significant and important sites that she could build on this globe. And I was glad to do that. I did that, and she would call me sometimes or email me and say, "Oh, can you get it from this angle or this angle, or during this time of day, whatever." And of course, I knew how to photograph that. So I got all the photographs that she needed, and it was, to me, just amazing, because I would see the globe, this much of it was done, then this much, then this much, and I finally started believing that she was really going to get it finished. And she said, "And I'm going to write a book about it." And what she wanted me to do was to write about each of the different places on the globe, which is what I did. That was my contribution to the book. And then at the end, she asked me to contribute some essays about historical Danville, which are in the back of the book. And so, we worked on it together, but the, the globe itself, when I asked her how long it took her to build it, the number of hours was just staggering. She spent 1,500 hours.
Wow.
And she donated the globe to Danville. And it has been seen by thousands of people, and they take it from place to place. I mean, this is fortunate. The city cherishes this globe. It is just amazing, totally amazing.
Well, thanks for sharing that story with us. And evidently, your partnership with Dottie has been fruitful, because now you have two books. Well, let me get them in the correct order here. Seldom Paired and Seldom Paired 2, that the two of you worked on together.
She asked me for the title of the work that we were doing. And what came to me, I mean, it was just like, okay, there it is, was Seldom Paired. And that was because she did mosaics. Mm-hmm. And I write and take photographs, and you seldom see those two together. Mm-hmm. So Seldom Paired came to me, and she loved it, and it fit. But give me that book on top. Mm-hmm. What led to this was, in all the years I've been writing poetry, and I've been writing since I was 13, so you can do the math. Mm-hmm. I had wanted to work on my poetry and make it more and more alive. Not just for the reader to be able to relate to what I'm saying, but to make it almost dynamic. And what I realized when I saw this, I was in her office. I had won, my photography had won a contest, and I was given a one-man show, and they gave me a nice monetary prize too. And I had to work with Dottie as far as when the pictures were going to be due and setting it up and whatever. And I walked into her office and I saw this. Didn't have any title to it, mm-hmm. but I knew exactly what it was. The moment I saw it, and I said,
"You're talking about the picture on the cover?"
This, mm-hmm. And I said, "That was from Hurricane Katrina, wasn't it?" And she said, "Yeah." And
it's a beautiful mosaic.
So I said, "Well, I've written poems about Hurricane Katrina and the losses that they suffered there." And I said I knew that had to have been from, the hurricane. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Yes, it was." And that just led me to suggest that we put the book together. And what I didn't know at the time, was that she is a graphics genius. She really is. And that's why each of these pages is just so beautiful, because she knows how to do that. I was looking for the one. Well, it's in here somewhere. I was looking for the poem that went with
with
the cover. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to show. There was the one picture you showed earlier.
But each 2-page spread it could be hung on the wall. I did some black and white photography, and she was able to make it into something brilliant.
Oh,
isn't that nice?
That's a beautiful one there.
This is like a coffee table book, and the second one is just as nice. For me, it was the culmination of what I had imagined my poetry could bring, which was combined with photograph or a meaningful illustration. And I couldn't do it myself, but she knew how to do it. And so we're still working on books. We've got as a matter of fact, one of the books is a children's book, and it's based on my young granddaughter named Ruth, who was named after my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be a fun book for people to read and share with their children. So, yeah, it's been amazing because it's like we just tend to encourage each other.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's nice when you find a partner that you can work with and collaborate with.
Exactly. Had no idea it would happen. She didn't either. And what's happened is, since we've been working together, we've had numerous shows, and we have a couple more coming up.
Cool.
Which is always
anything coming up in the near future that we could post or let our viewers know about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to send you the information because I don't have the exact dates and whatever, but I'll send that to you.
Okay. Well, Barry, it has been great getting to know you and talking with you and talking about art and talking about telling our story. Thank you so much for helping me tell my story, and I really appreciate
Well,
you.
thanks for having me.